Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Inside Coach webinar with Beyond Pulse. My name's Tom Shields, and I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Skye Eddy Bruce. Skye is the founder of the Soccer Parenting Association, as you can nicely see in the background of her screen right there. Skye is also a former professional player, and then coach across both the youth club, collegiate, and youth national team levels in the US. Skye is also the proud owner of a Federation B license and is a coach educator across both the United Soccer Coaches and grassroots levels of the USSF Federation. So somebody who is immensely well versed in the youth sports industry. And Skye, I'm really delighted that you've been able to share some time with us this morning, and looking forward to hearing all of your wonderful insights. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation as well. It's always great to dive into, parent engagement and what clubs need to be thinking. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I think the introduction, Skye, is really important so we can give a frame of reference. So whether you're a club coach, whether you're a technical lead, whether you're a business manager, Skye's been in the trenches with you. And that perspective of where her wisdom and insight is coming from is something that I think will be of immense value to everybody on the call. So thank you for being you. Let's start, Skye. Obviously, the Soccer Parenting Association, the wonderful work that you're doing, is born out of a need and a desire for you to see change, I guess, in how the youth sports industry, the youth soccer industry has typically operated. So broad question, but can you start with an insight into just quite why you think it's so important?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we all know, if we're involved in the youth game in any level, which those listening are, that there's a stress and oftentimes just a confusion in the relationship between the coaches and the parents. And so my why to all of the work that I'm doing with soccer parenting is because I believe that coaches, clubs, and parents collaborating is really in the best interest of player development. And it's a message that we haven't been pushing enough to coaches and into our clubs. But I do believe that this collaboration and that coaches and clubs actually kind of flipping the script to what has often been done and actually deciding and choosing to engage parents is really essential to improving our landscape.
So why then do you think there's such resistance to it, or traditionally been such resistance to it? Because the points that you reference, it seems logical to want to integrate, everybody that has a vested interest in the development of a player. So where's the disconnect been between why it hasn't happened, I guess, in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of reasons for it, and it's important that we maybe dive into them. One is, I think that we've had some incompetent coaches who have been scared and overwhelmed to engage with parents. And so in hiding their incompetencies, they have pushed parents away. So there's that layer to it that I think is just, hopefully the people listening don't fall into that category. But it's important to know that, parents have felt that, and that is part of our culture. But I think that the larger reason why it hasn't been done is because, man, these crazy soccer parents are really crazy. And when you've been burned by one, it's hard. I mean, I had a really difficult parent on my team last year. And I'm telling you, Tom, if I didn't have all of this work behind me, and if I didn't have the support of friends to get through that, I could have very well quit coaching, or I easily could have just changed my whole perception about parents. So I think the larger reason why it's there is that, I refer to them in soccer parenting as crazy soccer parents. I think the crazy soccer parents have really ruined it. And it's important for us to realize that they've ruined it for the level-headed parents too. Like, as much as coaches don't want to deal with parents because they've been burned, or they've been really difficult, or they've taken their time and, it's been too stressful of a relationship, parents who are level-headed and have thoughtful questions and concerns and are seeking advice and want to seek advice for their children are so fearful of being perceived as a crazy soccer parent that it really has changed the dynamic. And it's often the root cause of the dynamic and the relationship. Why it's kind of awkward. I mean, I don't know about you, but haven't you had kind of awkward conversations with parents when they come up to you and they're trying to talk to you, but It's just
Yeah.
not going well because they're nervous, and you're like, why are they nervous to talk to me? But that is innate in this coach-parent relationship.
Yeah, so I think that's a nice segue into, while there's an appreciation that there's been difficulties in the past, that there must also have been great examples of that barrier being, diminished and the integration being more apparent. So, with what you've just referenced and maybe the uncomfort in some parents understanding quite how to go about building a relationship with a coach, or, gaining insight that might be from, a very genuine and sincere place and not one that's trying to disregard or, undermine the work that's being done. Can you provide any insight into, the best examples that you've seen, either on a micro coach, singular coach and parent basis, or a macro kind of club to general parent population basis that people might be able to kind of take ideas from?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to frame that conversation with the research, because there's actually really a lot of good research on school and schools that engage parents and the benefits of parent engagement in schools. So while I can definitely and will reference a couple of key things that I've witnessed or been privy to through the work that I'm doing, or even as a parent, we need to understand that what the research says about schools that engage their parents properly and with a specific plan, that those schools are higher performing schools. So those kids score higher on test scores. Those kids consistently complete their homework. Those kids achieve more. They're higher when it comes to their personal motivation. Schools that engage parents, have parents who are empathetic to the school and to the teachers, have teachers who are more satisfied with their jobs, and parents who are more satisfied and perceive their child's environment to be better just by engaging. Like, the environment isn't necessarily even changing, but just by the school engaging the parents' perceptions of the school improve. So if we can relate all of that to a soccer club, or on a more micro level to a soccer team, that solves a lot of the issues that we're trying to solve in youth soccer. I mean, think about consistent homework completion, kids going off and training on their own, or kids that don't drop out of school. So kids that keep staying involved in the sport, parents who are satisfied. And I think what's really key here, and what I try to get across to coaches all the time, is that you will actually have higher job satisfaction as a coach when you form these positive relationships and engage parents in the right way. So, I think, again, it's important to frame that. So to answer your question about some specific examples, I spoke just yesterday to Alexandria Youth Soccer, great club in Northern Virginia that I've played against, and I actually always enjoy playing against them. Like, the club plays good soccer. It's always a good game, nice possession style play, coaches who are positive on the sidelines. I love coaching next to them. Coaches who are really nice, they come up to me before a game and are engaging. So you just said the club as a whole has a really good vibe to it. And when I dove in yesterday, I realized that they have what they call, a parent committee, a parent advisory group. And I think that this is a really key opportunity for parent engagement. They invite the parents to come to a couple of meetings, and they invite the parents to brainstorm about ways that they can help and support the parents more. And then from there, they break out into subcommittees to try to solve some of these problems. So that, to me, on a micro level, would be an excellent example of a club that is like thinking differently, going outside the box to engage parents. Side note, the reason I reached out to them about that is because I'm working with Soccer Parenting to establish a framework for implementing a program like this for clubs to be able to, for free, just take from us a system of how to do a committee like that with their parents.
Yeah. No, I mean, that sounds wonderful. And I think a couple of the points that I make as I quickly scribble notes when you open your mouth right now, the stuff on heightened perception, even if nothing has innately changed, perception is reality in so much of this industry. And I think, I've heard you speak before, and with certain individuals that are responsible for the management of clubs or just the management of teams, and the sad reality of families, not just players, but full families club hopping and trying to find the best fit. You know, do you feel like if we go to just simply innate human needs of relatedness and involvement and, you know, having some degree of input into, you know, into action and feeling like clubs value their input and are not just seeing them as, you know, a paycheck, that obviously their degree of commitment back to the organization heightens. Is that something that's fair? So, you know, even if it's just, as you say, I think that's a wonderful example, and I haven't heard of one like that before with a parent committee being established. Things like end of season questionnaires that might go out that, you know, look at establishing, hey, what do you think? And while I'm not going to make any promise that as a club coach or as a DOC that things will definitely change, I'm definitely prepared to receive feedback, because, you know, if we're prepared as coaches to give feedback to players to help them learn, then surely as clubs we should be modeling that desired behavior in how we operate. Is that
absolutely
kind of fair to?
That's 100% fair to say, and there's good research to back that up too. If you look at like sense of community theory,
Okay.
which is something I've been diving into lately. I'll actually be presenting on it at the convention this year. You know, if you can see what the research says about player retention or incentive community theory and studies that have actually been done in sporting and youth sporting environments. So there's some really you know, important research for us to understand. But a lot of what you were just speaking about, I would qualify in sort of like the trust category. Yeah. Which is the foundation of the work that I am doing. Is, you know, when we're talking about this relationship and we're talking about parent engagement, what we're really talking about, Tom, is establishing trust. And we as coaches have to take the lead on that. As clubs, we have to take the lead on putting our best foot forward with establishing trust with parents. And whether that be, like you were talking about, end of season questionnaires, or whether that be other forms of communication, regular feedback to players, whether that be doing what we say we're going to do, whether that be us being loyal to the players that are families who are committing to us, you know, so many things that we can do to establish trust. And so many of the issues that I'm diving into are broad issues on a real macro level within our soccer environment. And I think it's safe to say that trust is a huge problem. From the very top down, we don't trust U.S. soccer, you know, all the banter, the Twitter speak, you know, that goes on, the stress that we have around that relationship. And in my mind, I believe that that's fallen and trickled all the way down to the trust between a coach and a parent, or a coach and a referee. You know, all of those things come into play.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, we've both been around the industry long enough to recognize that maybe there's an assumption that trust is given and ultimately it has to be earned, right? Like I think anybody, whether team level or club level or senior management across multiple organization level, you know, we've got to demonstrate why we deserve to be trusted. So with that, and I'm going to come back to your trust relative to that micro level that you discussed, but just on this part, in terms of building it, how important in the modern day with different communication strategies do you believe social media presence to be for clubs trying to present their message? Because I know it's very intentional. You get a sense of community, you get a sense of values from what is shared, from what is promoted, from what is endorsed, encouraged, or just simply the good work that's going on that might otherwise be missed. Any kind of, you know, any thoughts on that?
I've actually that's a good question. I've been pondering that myself a little bit, because one of the big issues that I run into in my work is getting parents to engaged enough. So you've got all these great resources out there for them. And what I feel is that social media is sometimes given too much credit. Like a club can push out on social media that they have this event over the weekend, but I don't know that they're really getting the engagement that they want from that. So I definitely feel like social media is important. We can't deny that. And I think that there's a way that clubs can better use social media to portray values and to show examples of establishing trust and collaboration. I think just the images that get sent out. So I think that we're missing a lot there, and we could dive into that if you want.
Yeah,
but I do think that it's a little overused, or can be overused at time, or we can put too much emphasis as clubs on utilizing that as the source of messaging. But I'm not sure that it's as effective as we think.
Yeah, and I just think it's right now it's the immediacy of how you can promote real-time information, right? So obviously we've spoken offline a number of times about club integration events, and what can the membership of an organization be doing together to collectively build an identity and a sense of community in their club. And I think sometimes it allows clubs and coaches to demonstrate a willingness to do a little bit more, because perhaps that trust is diminished if there's an assumption that it's just a kind of transactional relationship. I come to practice, I deliver, we go home, and coaches forget about things. And maybe for some that is the case when they've got 5,000 other things to be worried about and life gets in the way. But I do think for others, there's an ability to identify and applaud best practice when it might be that, hey, the session's rained out, instead of cancelling, we're going to move inside if we've got that luxury, and we're going to do classroom sessions on X or Y, or we're going to go off-site and do team building stuff. Or you speak from your parent perspective, if you could, about what examples of behaviors like that might do to building and promoting that kind of trust mechanism and feeling that you would have towards a program or the coach that your children are working with.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I'll put my parent hat on. I have to do this all the time. I'm like, okay, now I'm a coach. Okay, now I'm but I do feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be, because the experiences that I've had coaching at a high level and working in the youth game for so long, and now combined with all of this work I'm doing with parenting and the experiences I've had as a parent, have really put me right here for a reason. So from a parenting perspective, like actually a couple of things came to mind. And this kind of goes back to the sense of community theory. One of the key components of sense of community theory is administrative control, or administrative care. I think it's administrative care and concern. So from my perspective as a parent, just FYI, I'm going in 50 directions. I'm running from work, I'm running the kids there, I've got another child over here, I've got crossing carpools, it's raining and it's cold and practice might be canceled, and part of me is going, yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, hey, we feel that as coaches too sometimes towards the end of the season.
Yeah,
I mean, come on. Not all the time, but sometimes. So springing that on a parent at the last moment is probably not necessarily always the best thing, but to say from the very beginning of the season and to set those expectations, we will not cancel practices, even if it's raining, we'll plan on practicing, and this is where we're going to do it. But I've seen clubs that have tried to do those indoor sessions, and they're 20 miles from where practice is, and the carpools are all blown up. Parents have to take off work early. So there's concern that we need to have as clubs on that side of things. But at the same time, I think it's excellent. And I think that showing and demonstrating that you're putting all of your effort into supporting the child and their development is exactly the message that we need to be pushing out to parents. So doing those things is great, as long as the appropriate expectations from the very beginning are put in place, so that we are showing administrative care and concern for parents, establishing a sense of community just through adding in those things. So
yeah, and being empathetic to needs, right? It's the kind of compassion, empathetic.
That's trust. Exactly.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So I said I want to revisit something you said, the trickle down effect from top to bottom. I read very recently, maybe 2 or 3 days ago, a pretty powerful blog post on parents and their presence at practices, and the recommendation that as a parent you wouldn't go into a school classroom and watch every interaction between teacher and student, nor would you feel the need to question every decision, or get back in the car at the end of school and maybe have an input into what was happening in their math lesson or their English lesson. what are your viewpoints on that practice space, and ultimately, should it be a safe haven for players and coaches to operate? Obviously, after living in both worlds, I'm just curious as to seeing, where you stand on that.
Well, my most trafficked article is one I wrote like 5 years ago now. I think it's entitled 5 Reasons Why Parents Should Not Attend Practice. It has so many comments, so many mean comments from parents on it, so much banter, like you can't tell us what to do, plus so many like insightful comments, like, wow, I've never thought of this before, thank you. So I do believe that there's not a right answer to this, because I do think I could also write an article, 2 reasons why parents should go to practice. There's definitely more reasons why you shouldn't, but I don't think that we can say it's one way or the other. Now, the club that I work with, Richmond Strikers, has a policy that parents can't, they're not on the sidelines. You can't like walk across the fields at our youth training facility that we have. Now, some parents are invariably on the sidelines because the coach is operating on the field right next to the side where the parents are, and that's fine. But I do think that it can be an intrusion. And in the article, I shared about my experiences with my child. So my daughter, Callie, I was always practicing at the same time as she was. I never coached her team. I was a goalkeeper coach for the club. So I was training the keepers on the field that was like right next to hers, or was often sharing the field. And the club was nice to do that. So it was the same times. She'd practice certain days, certain times, and that would be when I would do my goalkeeper training for the club. So it was convenient for me as a coach. But what I found is that I, would linger in the water break with the kids for, just to be able to look at Callie and watch her on the ball. Or, we get in the car after practice and I would be able to say something to her that was actually related. It was me talking to her, like, so did you like that part of it? Or I saw you, in this part of the session, maybe you, and me giving her some advice. So right. I was like inserting myself into her practice environment. And then when I stopped coaching the goalkeepers at the club and moved on to a team and wasn't at the same time as her, I realized how much our relationship for me just flourished in terms of the game. Like to hear about practices from her point of view, to not have any preconceived ideas about how she performed or anything like that really, really made a huge difference. Side note, Callie didn't care one way or the other. But for me and for my stress level as a parent, it was much better for me not to be around. And I really enjoyed letting her experience the game and giving her some autonomy. And that to me would be the short answer after my long answer to your question, is that we know that autonomy is a key component of motivation. You have, we need to appreciate that, and we need to let our children have their environment. So I don't think that clubs, I think clubs need to be careful having like really strict guidelines or rules. Although again, my club does at the travel level. I think it's best for kids that the parents not be there. I saw a recent post as well. I don't know that I read that article, but I saw there was like a Twitter post and then a lot of comments from coaches. There was a coach asking, should parents be allowed at practice? And all the responses, Tom, were all about the parents. Who were like, well, I always let parents. I let parents. I don't want parents there. Or I want to establish trust, so I allow parents to be there. But I found it very interesting, and I was very curious to the fact that none of the comments were related to the player. Nobody said, what does the player want? And I think that is really the answer to the question.
So, assuming that players may prefer them not to be there, or clubs may, similar to the program that you've referenced that you work in, may say our preference is that they are somewhat removed. Any examples of great ideas for engaging that community that might still be there? If they're not off running errands or dropping another carpool off, like, is there anything that you've seen and thought, hey, that's a wonderful way of having an hour and a half spent together at a facility? Is there anything that you could share?
Yeah, I don't remember the specific clubs, but when that article I wrote first came out, I got a lot of great comments. Said, oh yeah, we've started a parent workout group during practices. Yeah, one of the parent holds behind and watches all the other kids, And then the group of us goes and does a run or a walk, or I think one of them even had hired a personal group trainer to come in and do a session while the kids were training. So going back to the sense of community theory, this is called social spaces, and it's one of the key components, a sense of community. And so what can we do as clubs to establish social spaces for parents to engage? What about like a homework space for the siblings that are brought along to be able to sit quietly and do homework? Or what about a soccer tennis field set up for the kids to be for the traveling or the accompanying siblings and parents to be able to play soccer tennis? Or what if you create a space where the parents can linger? There is a club in Ohio that has food trucks that come out. We tried this at Strikers too, so that parents can hang out around the food trucks and grab dinner to go at the end of the session. So I do think that there are some clubs that are doing some great things here, and it's not that hard. It's just a matter of clubs being intentional and deciding, that they're going to create something for parents or establish a social space for parents during training.
Yeah. No, I think I think it's fascinating because a lot of the times we discuss problems without offering solutions. So, sharing ideas around, how the barriers could be overcome, I think is a really important piece. I'm going to change the lens a little bit. Is there, and it may be my somewhat biased viewpoint, having obviously kind of spent the last 10 years in the US and growing up as a very young professional to now a less young professional. Have you come across issues where parents, especially societally, that are in, with soccer being a pretty privileged sport in this country, some of the backgrounds of the families being from prominent, high-powered industries and job roles, and obviously lots of coaches, because coaches aren't making a fortune in this country as professionals, are typically younger, maybe without families themselves. If they have families, more often than not, it's young families. Have you felt that there is a barrier to entry of relationships based around the age of the coach, and the parents perhaps sometimes discrediting his or her value and ability to perform a role? And if so, have you any advice that you could offer to coaches that may be feeling that, or club directors that may be feeling that? The concept of obviously managing up is a difficult one, but especially when parents are paying for the privilege of being part of the program. Just intrigued by any of your thoughts there.
Yes, I think that there are some real stresses that happen in that relationship, especially when trust isn't established. I'm not exactly sure that it exactly has to do with age, although I think that can be a certain barrier. I think it's essential that young coaches have mentors that can be giving them advice and supporting them through those relationships, somebody to ask questions and bounce off communication with, not just the technical, tactical, all of the practice structure, those types of things, but also, a mentor about things like these relationships. That being said, I've met and know, I myself was one, I bet you were one, a young coach who can manage these parent relationships with little stress. And I think that is because of skills that I have or you have, or just to take us out of it, coaches that are good at that, regardless of if they're young or not. What are those skills that they bring to the table? I think we can generally classify them into emotional intelligence skills, like they're highly emotionally intelligent, and so therefore that relationship is easier. Now, all of that being said, I know that stress exists. I don't relate to that now because I am not a young coach, but I am a female coach, and I think that it's similar. The barrier that I feel, that the little bit of stress that I sometimes feel in a new environment as the only female coach, or talking to a bunch of parents who in my mind are thinking, oh man, she's a girl, she doesn't know what she's talking about as much as the male coaches, I'm playing that narrative out of my mind in my insecurities. I mean, those insecurities are something that all of us as coaches deal with. And so for the youth coach that is having to manage up and deal with those relationships, it's inevitable to the youth landscape that you're going to have to do that. And having skills and the ability to communicate effectively to parents that are professionals, that have higher degrees in education than you potentially do, that have multiple children, that are used to dealing in large board meetings and those types of things, having to deal effectively and communicate effectively with those parents is just part of the job. And so while that stress might be there, we can't use that as an excuse for not engaging or as an excuse for mistakes. Like, we just need to be better. And that's always been my, mentality as a female coach. Like, I can't let that get in my head. I just need to be better. I just need to be good. I just need to be my best. And I do think that it's important that we continue to run those messages through.
I think that's fantastic. And I think that's a really nice place, and with a really nice message to kind of to end and let people digest on what's been obviously a conversation full of some incredible insight. Skye, I will ask two things. You've obviously referenced a couple of theories and made reference to some ideas that are new to me, and I'm certainly intrigued by them. So any direction that you could point people in if they want to learn more? And then secondly to that, how can they contact you if obviously they want more insight on the great work that you're doing and to learn from somebody that's obviously such a prominent figure in the field right now?
Excellent, thank you. So can you add attachments to this? Can I provide you some research?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we can do that.
This. I will get you the research that I use mostly on sensitive community theory, parent engagement in school. I mean, there are collaborative studies. If you just search parent engagement studies, you will find so many resources towards that. There are a couple of collaborative studies that have pulled data from multiple studies together to find themes. So I'll send you that information as well. But sensitive community theory is kind of new research. And if you just search sensitive community theory, I don't have the study. I thought I had it right here, but I don't have it right here to be able to reference who the authors are of the study. But it's new research that's come out in the last couple of years.
Perfect. And then how can they get more of you?
Yeah, so you can find me at all the social media. My handle is Soccer Parenting or Skye Eddy Bruce, SKYEEDDY Bruce. But you can find me at Soccer Parenting. My website is soccerparenting.com. And then our membership platform is the soccerparentresourcecenter.com. So that's a parent education platform that we've created to solve that parent education dilemma that clubs and coaches often have. But yeah, definitely hit me up. Twitter's a good way to connect with me just in terms of messaging. And if there's anything that I can do, any advice I can provide, I'm always interested and look forward to having engaging conversations with coaches and clubs and parents that are really trying to make sure that the children and the players are inspired. So I'm here to help.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much. And thank you for sparing some time with us this morning. It's really appreciated and a pleasure as always.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom. Appreciate it.